Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next installment of the Trent Advantage live stream series. My name is Zach Davidson, and I will be your host and moderator for this evening. Tonight's topic is going to be on our Bachelor of Social Work program, and joining me tonight to discuss this program is Jen.
Hello, I'm Jen. I'm the academic coordinator for the Bachelor of Social Work program here at Trent, and I'm here to tell you more about the program and answer any questions that you may have.
Perfect. Okay, so before we get started on our little interview that we have set up for you folks, we're going to just ask that if you do have any questions, to please feel free to be asking those questions in the text box. And then that way, once we're done with our interview here, we'll then be able to answer those questions as they've come in. So with that, let's get started.
Cool.
Okay, so as we had just mentioned, this is the Trent Advantage live stream series. So what are the advantages then of our social work program or of Trent's social work program?
Yeah, so I think some of the advantages really source from the fact that it's at Trent University. It's offered on both of our campuses, and both campuses offer a super unique experience. Our Trent Durham campus is like a really kind of small collegial campus. So you end up knowing like everybody in the program, your professors, the folks like the administration staff. It's really easy to get services. And really, yeah, I love going down there because I love just the camaraderie and the feel of that campus. And our Trent B.S.W campus is bigger, but I think still has that kind of source of you end up knowing the folks in your department. And it's a really beautiful campus. So we're settled right on a river. I really love just being here and seeing the trees and all of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the Trent aspect of it. For the social work program, we are a newer program. And so I think that's led to us developing a really dynamic curriculum for students to follow along. Our students have placement, and you're going to be learning foundational kind of general B.S.W material or Bachelor of Social Work material. It certainly prepares students to go into the field working when they graduate or to go on to grad school, typically at a Master's of Social Work level. The program really covers topics like child welfare, kind of race relations, general social work theory, and how to kind of build your practice, and also integrates in ideas of self-care and ensuring that as a social worker, you're taking care of yourself, because social work is certainly an emotionally labor-intensive career, and it's so foundational and so important in our society. And so we want to ensure that our students who are graduating know how to take care of themselves so they can have a long and prosperous career.
I think that's a really important aspect then probably of that program, is to be able to have those skill sets and not only be able to help others, but also be able to help yourself.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you kind of alluded to that a little bit, but how will then the program really help students, further their career in social work?
Yeah. So our first 2 years start out as more kind of foundational or more generalized years. So you're taking some introductory social work courses, but you're also taking courses outside of the social work degree. Oftentimes I recommend to students Indigenous studies, women's studies, psychology, sociology. So you're getting kind of a wide breadth of social science kind of background. Sometimes we have students that intend to come to social work and then find something else that they're super passionate about and go off into a different kind of pathway. Excuse me. I'm a little sick right now. And then we have students who, really just fall in love with the profession and kind of pursue and continue on in the degree and graduate with a B.S.W degree. So in our final 2 years, what we call the professional years, our students complete over 700 hours of practical placement. You also do mainly social work courses. So out of like the kind of 10 full credits or 20 classes that you're going to be doing over your last 2 years, only one comes from outside of social work. So it's super intensive into the social work sphere. And you're also in a smaller cohort. So each of our campuses has a smaller cohort in the professional years. So you really build a really great network within your cohort. So people that you can rely on when you get into the field and network and that type of thing. So yeah.
See, I like that, because those elective courses that you kind of had recommended in like sociology and Indigenous studies, those would probably really play in well with that social work field. and kind of gives them a deeper perspective in those areas.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we did talk a little bit about then the program structure, so that's great. Now, with those professional years 3 and 4, is that something that they're going to be going into automatically, or is there kind of a process to get into those years?
Yeah. So our social work program is set up in kind of like a 2-and-2 method. So the first 2 years are more kind of generalized admissions. So lots of students, whether they are majoring in social work, majoring outside of social work, can take our social work courses and potentially actually be working towards kind of meeting those requirements that are listed out in years 1 and years 2 for the social work program. We often have a lot of teachers, nurses that take our courses, psychology, sociology. Those all tend to be kind of, our social work courses tend to be very popular with students taking those majors as well. And then I've lost my track of, or my frame of mind.
Oh, just to be able to get into those professional years, what do they have to do to get to
So it's outlined in our academic calendar, which I highly recommend all of you go and check out. So trentu.ca/calendar. Although I will warn you that when I was looking at the academic calendar for the first time out of high school, I was super daunted. So like, take a breath, don't let it overwhelm you. I'm here. There's so many people here that are available to kind of explain what's going on. But in years 1 and years 2, we outline the courses that you need to take in order to be eligible to apply into our professional years. So our professional years is a limited enrollment program. So there is a secondary admissions process into those years. And it is only kind of gathered out of Trent students. So you do need to be a Trent student because there are some courses that you actually can't get anywhere else that are part of the admission requirements. So if any of you are maybe looking at transferring kind of college or another university, I highly recommend that you kind of chat with me once you've applied and have your transfer credits, and I can kind of line out what that looks like for you. But yeah, so you meet those requirements in years 1 and year 2, and our current students that are in year 2 right now who have met those requirements or on the way to meeting the requirements are applying right now. So our due date is typically March 1st. And our students submit the application. There is an essay that kind of outlines your experiences as a person in the classroom and kind of how that has built you into kind of the social worker you intend to be. And then we also take into consideration your grades at Trent, so the courses that you completed at Trent. And in kind of combination, we use those kind of 2 data points to develop a list of how we're going to offer our admissions. On each campus, we have a maximum of 30 spaces that we can offer. So it is a competitive process. I do recommend students really kind of aim for those kind of high grades. You want to be looking at grades that are kind of high 70s, if not higher, to really kind of fall in a competitive range. But it also isn't like, I mean, the most kind of crazy competitive program that you're ever going to come across. Like it's not med school in that sense. So I think like it's really important to build kind of a collegial foundation within the program. So working with your colleagues instead of kind of plotting how you're going to get their space and that type of thing. So yeah. So yeah. And
that's not really the environment that you're going into as a social worker. No. Like you want to have that kind of collaborative mentality.
Yeah.
And that's probably something that you could really kind of showcase and talk about too in that essay that you referenced, right?
Yes. Yeah, totally. And then and I know this question is kind of coming up later, but we also are very supportive of students who say don't get into their first time around. You can apply again. You can retake courses to increase your grades. But I also have no problem letting students know there are other options on a way to kind of a B.S.W. or M.S.W. pathway that would then lead to a career in social work.
Perfect. Okay. And that honestly leads right into the next question. Okay. So if they're not successful getting into the professional years, what are their options at that point?
Yeah. So the point of the first 2 years are to kind of build your credentials and your knowledge within kind of social work and the social sciences stream, but also kind of build alternative or backup pathways to different degree programs. So you want to be strategic when you're building your first 2 years and make sure that you're taking the courses that you would need to, say, continue on in psychology or in Indigenous studies or in women's studies, that type of thing. So you can kind of continue on without taking a break or a step in your studies. years. So we really encourage students to have kind of pre-planned for the worst case scenario and hope for the best in that kind of case. And I'm definitely available to meet with students to talk about various opportunities and what kind of a master's pathway looks like. Or there are some universities that offer kind of upgrading to a B.S.W. once you already have a degree and that type of thing. So if a student just wants to kind of continue on and not try again, then that's totally fine. And we're here to support that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we talked about that a little bit. And then now the academic and non-academic requirements that students need to meet, what are those? Are there any that they need to meet going into the first 2 years? And if not, are there then some that they have to meet then going into the professional years?
Yeah. So kind of getting in or coming to Trent, you need to meet those kind of general requirements coming from high school or coming from a college transfer. And all of that information is available on our website. If you have a view book from us, all of that kind of fun stuff, you can give us a call and we can outline what those look like. But for an Ontario audience, you're looking at your 6-4U/ credits coming from a school background. And we're looking at kind of a 70% minimum to be considered and kind of going from there. College and university is a little bit different, but basically if you have a successful time at college or university, you can apply and then start working on those requirements at Trent. I think for getting into the professional years, I've already kind of outlined that, but there certainly are requirements. So you need to have a total of 10.0 credits from the university level. And there is a little caveat there for transfer students coming from the college level. Some students come over with a placement already, like a placement credit already on their account. So those students would actually need 11 because we don't count that placement in the credit count because it's just a pass. And then students need to have our 4 social work credits, and we're looking at a 70% overall cumulative average and a 70% grade in each one of those social work courses. We will look at the top grades. So if you've retaken a course, we're going to look at the higher of the two, and lots of different math that I have to go through in the springtime to build my kind of admissions data. But it's all really clearly laid out in the calendar of for the social work, so the academic calendar in the social work section. So and then again, I would recommend that if you are looking at those kind of base minimums are certainly not going to be the competitive average to get in. So don't aim for kind of base 70 because aim better. And if you're aiming for higher, that's going to make you kind of in that more competitive zone.
For sure, definitely. And I know for me, I talk to a lot of college students just because that's kind of where I go a lot of the time. So for students like that are coming from some of these SSW programs, I know like usually they're looking at a base minimum average coming from those programs of a 65.
75?
Well, that's for the transfer pathway,
okay.
which I was going to just talk about. So if you're not coming through a transfer pathway, your minimum required average would be a 65% overall cumulative average. And then any course that you have a 70% in would be assessed for transfer credit eligibility. Now, if you're coming through one of those transfer pathways, and we do have some with colleges in Ontario, if you are coming from one of those pathways, then it would be the 75% overall cumulative average to then be able to come through that pathway. The nice thing about the pathways is that you usually will get more credits if you come through a pathway as opposed to if you don't. So just kind of bear that in mind when you are looking at coming to Trent as a college transfer student. Okay, so now we've looked at those experiences and what they need to get in. The then hands-on and career-related experiences that the program provides. You had mentioned, there's I think about 700 hours that they can do in their upper years. Obviously, that's really important to get into this type of career and field. But what types of then placement are they doing, and kind of how has that played into their program?
Yeah. So excuse me, I'm going to cough again, I think. So coming into the professional years, winter semester of year 3, our students are in essentially like a 2-course placement. So those students spend 3 days a week actually out at placement. And your placements are in kind of social work, helping profession. So that can be anything. We do actually have some third year students placed at a CAS. So that tends to be more of a fourth year placement, but we actually have some that are placed there this year, which is super exciting. But working with local municipal governments when it comes to kind of money and fees, or working with Boys and Girls Club or community living, or kind of just various. In Peterborough, we have an organization called PARN, which is the Peterborough AIDS Resource Network. So we have some students there that are having some great time. We also have students that work within the Trent University community. So we have a number of students right now doing kind of consent and sexual assault kind of workshops and that type of thing on campus. So there's a huge variety. And I think sometimes the third year placement often kind of introduces students to how broad social work can be. And sometimes it takes a while to kind of understand that, like, you might be in a situation that doesn't look kind of social worky to you, and yet you're totally doing social work in that capacity. So things like, I mean, say you're on the street in a community and you're handing out some food and that type of thing to the population who is living homeless at that time. That is working. That's a great opportunity to chat with those people, see if they need resources. Are they seeking medical help? Okay. And you can kind of, you can work with them to ensure that, that they're getting the resources and the help they need. And they might not know kind of what's available to them. So you can play a really monumental role for them. And then in our fourth year, our students are in placement the whole year for 3 days a week. And then they're doing classes on the other two, which is similar to the winter semester of the third year. And those are all kind of one placement. So the full year you're working at one organization, and that really lets you kind of sink deep into your learning. So, you might kind of get started and be like, oh, this is old hat. I kind of know what's going on. And then something's going to come up, and you really need to kind of work with your field instructor and your faculty field liaison, which is your professor that kind of runs the seminar here. And there's so much learning that goes on from just kind of that class. So it's really not just kind of going to work and doing the motions. You're doing a lot of kind of learning and mental work, and kind of learning, not even like the tricks of the trade, but how social workers function and kind of different pathways.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds like then there's a good variety of
totally
placement opportunities that they can get exposed to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we work in a radius as well. That's about an hour's drive from each of our campus. Okay. We've also just built like a really exciting new community placement in Kingston. So we would never place somebody there, but our field coordinator has actually offered that up to students to see, maybe you're from Kingston, so you can just move home and crash on someone's couch, or, rent a kind of 2-night-a-week house or that type of thing. So there's lots of different opportunities. But students coming in should be prepared that you could be placed up to an hour's commute or an hour's drive away from your campus. And it's really important that students kind of come prepared, that it's on you to kind of get yourself there. So whether you have a car or figuring out public transit or taking like carpooling, that type of thing, just make sure that you're prepared to do that, because that community can be very small and not, say, downtown Oshawa or downtown Peterborough.
So you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah,
right? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And then now, with it being a placement, it sounds like the school is going to have some involvement in where they're going and how they're kind of getting into those types of opportunities. So how does that work, and who really coordinates that? Yeah,
that's a really good question, because I think we work potentially different than some other universities and potentially some other colleges. So our placements are assigned. So students get assigned a placement and go through an interview process. And oftentimes you could be competing against kind of other folks, not within the Trent social work program, but potentially with other social work programs and that type of thing. So you want to make sure that you're on your A game for that. But everyone is guaranteed a placement in years 3 and years 4. And our field coordinator, or field education coordinator, fosters all of those arrangements, I guess, and make sure that you're in a quality place where you can learn either kind of by exposure or really sink deep in that kind of fourth year. So you are assigned. So that's kind of how it goes. So you don't have the stress of like going out by yourself and like asking all sorts of random people, wondering if it's an appropriate social work area or that type of thing. Like the kind of stress is off of you. You get assigned, you kind of go through the process, and we go from there.
And that's good, because I feel that at the end of the day, like, the folks that are getting into these placements, like, they're going to be quality placement opportunities for them to really gain that needed experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but you said that the Trent University, the social work program is available at both campuses, both our Durham campus, our Durham GTA campus, and our Peterborough one. So since that's the case, what are the differences, if there are any, between those kind of classroom environments and the opportunities that they have for experiential learning? Is there a difference really, or?
I mean, other than the fact that like Trent Durham, you might be able to go like a little bit further into Toronto, but even kind of Toronto, if there's an opportunity there, it could be offered out to students and that type of thing. Or you can indicate, you'd really like an opportunity in kind of the Toronto area if that was something you're interested in. Now, I will put a caveat on that. No way guaranteed. And like, again, you are assigned your placement. So it may be in Peterborough, it may be in Oshawa, depending on where your campus affiliation is, or kind of in around that area. But yeah, so I wouldn't say there's like a huge difference in the program. We have the same faculty, so the department uses the same faculty, so you would be having experience with the same people. In the third year, the class sizes are the same, so there's no difference in kind of the admissions quota or admissions restrictions in that sense. So it's, the same size, the same faculty. The social work department is like physically located at Peterborough, but we have a strong presence at the Durham campus. I'm down there when needed. I was there last week. I'm going up next week to do a presentation. So it's I would say it's fairly similar. And we're super excited about the new building that's coming. I was really excited to see that, like, it has walls and it's tall and like, that's very exciting.
For sure. Now, for I guess obviously down the road, once people are finish this program, their goal is to move into a career. And obviously, like the most logical one would be to become a social worker. Right? That's just what the name says, so it makes sense. Now, is there other opportunities with this program for different types of careers? And kind of what would that look like? Or can you give us a few examples?
That's a good question. I think social work is kind of a unique university because it very much kind of tells you what you're going to be, much like nursing. Most nursing students probably go into nursing, that type of thing. But maybe the type of social work that you're going to be doing is maybe different than you anticipated, or different what you imagine social work to be. So I think oftentimes people envision social work as like, you and I'm a counselor and we're talking kind of one-on-one, that type of thing. That certainly is a way of doing social work and a career and a profession in social work, but it is by far not the only option. Social workers can work for the government in drafting policy and ensuring that we are taking care of the vulnerable populations within our province, within the country, working for NGOs in that kind of capacity. You can also work on a more like local level and working, say, for NGOs within kind of your city and that type of thing. So maybe a more direct contact, but maybe you're running groups for students who, like, parents don't come home immediately after high school or elementary school. So you're playing games with them and you're doing that kind of stuff. But there's social work aspects that's happening there. You're getting to know the students, you're building kind of trust and confidence and that type of thing. And you can encourage them and be a positive influence in their life and that kind of aspect. So there's a lot of different types of social work. And then I think the benefit with a university degree is, foundationally, we teach critical thinking, and that is so foundational in almost any career that you're going into. I'm not a social worker, and I know in my kind of career this way, I have to ask questions and I have to interrogate, is this policy, is it fair for everybody? Has it taken into account systemic issues that certain populations may face that others don't, and that type of thing. And so there's a lot of critical thinking that I think goes into any meaningful work that you're going to do. So I like, whether you're going to be a social worker or not, I think the writing skills, reading skills, discussion and working with people skills that you're going to get is going to help you be successful no matter kind of what career you choose.
Perfect. Great answer. And now, do you have any kind of stories that you can share of, where alumni have gone after they've graduated from this program?
So we do have a number of students who have gone on to kind of Masters of Social Work programs. I have a friend who's now working with Veterans Affairs in that kind of capacity as a social worker. Folks, there's an organization in Peterborough called Alternatives, and they work with folks with developmental kind of disabilities and like spectrum issues and that type of thing. And there's social, like we have students who've been kind of social workers there. So those are kind of two that have come up to mind. We also have one of our Durham students won our alumni award this year, and she's done a lot of work in race relations and working with the Black community in, I think, the Scarborough area, and running kind of organizations and programs, like I think specifically for like student populations, but also working with their families to ensure that everyone's getting a nutritious meal and getting access to the services that they need and that type of thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Those are great stories. And then now finally, if students that are listening or anybody that has further questions about the social work program, who should they contact? Who should they reach out to?
Yeah. So the best email address to email is socialwork@trentu.ca. So that is kind of the one that's monitored all the time. And we typically try to get to it kind of within one business day. So our administrative assistant often forwards me messages that come there. So she just makes sure that you're getting to the right person. So that is a really great one. So that was socialwork@trentu.ca. You can also check out the social work website. So trentu.ca/social work. And there's a lot of information on there as well. So you can kind of check it out and see kind of what the program's about, learn about some of the faculty and that type of thing. So
great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for kind of, providing those details and really shedding light on the program. I know the students have probably learned a lot from how this program is structured. And now I kind of want to turn it over to them and really see what questions they might have.
That's my favorite part.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so looking here, I'm looking at the first question, and this is from Lisa. And it looks like Lisa is coming from Seneca College.
Oh, awesome.
In their SSW program.
Yeah.
And she's talking about her placement hours.
Great.
So she's done 600 hours of placement, 200 in the second semester, 400 in the third semester. And she's asking whether or not she would still need to do the 700 hours in our program.
Yeah, so it depends on if you come over. So if you get granted, the course is coded as SWRK 3000Y. So if you get that course as a transfer credit, in third year, you don't have to take that course, and that equates to 240 hours. You will have to do the fourth year placement, which is 460 hours minimum. So that would be kind of how that transfers over. Now, we also recommend that students consider doing both placements because it's building your network, it's building your experience. I think there's also a lot to be said for a social service worker and social workers work in different capacities. And it might just be kind of the thought process and how they're approaching different situations and that type of thing. They may functionally be doing the same or similar jobs, but really kind of what's going on in your head and how you're processing everything is really important. And there's a difference there. And so that's where also doing the third year placement can be very beneficial because it's just giving you that opportunity to kind of learn more, grow more, and build your network, which is only going to benefit you when you go out into the work world.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Destiny then has a question here. What's the best way to choose our courses? So I'm assuming what you're referring to is her courses that she needs to take once she gets Trent. She looks like she's transferring from Durham College's SSW program.
Okay.
And she's saying here that her backup is CYC. I'm not sure she's referring to our Child and Youth Studies program.
That kind of sounds like.
Her courses when she got transferred over from SSW at Durham College.
Yeah, so again, you would want to check out the transfer credits that you've received and how they line up with the Trent University social work requirements into the professional years, and then kind of go in there. So you would likely need to take SWRK 2001 and 2004, and then you would have, so that's 1 credit or 2 half credits, and then you would have 4.0 credits remaining that you would need to take. And I would say just be really kind of strategic in building your kind of backup plan. So if you received any kind of child and youth study credits, then kind of build off of those. If not, you might want to focus kind of in that area and building that kind of backup pathway just in case you're not admitted to the professional years. So that would be kind of my strategy. There's also academic advisors on each campus that you can go to, and they're really great for helping you build up that kind of backup pathway. So I'm going to say if you have like a social work question, I'm going to be your expert and you should come and chat with me. But if you're like, okay, so what do I do if I don't go social work route? The academic advisors work generally with the students and all of the different programs and that type of thing. So they're going to be the best people to go to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sean here has a question then. How many courses would students be taking while in placement?
Yeah. So your placement in third year is a full credit, so actually worth 2 classes. So you're taking 3 classes outside of that for a total of 5 classes in a semester, or 2.5 credit value. And the same is going to be true for the fourth year, but just over the full year. So in first semester, you're going to be taking 5 classes, but 2 of them are already taken up by your placement, so 3 classes, and then in the winter semester again, 3 classes. Now, some students may work in advance, so maybe you have met some of the third and fourth year requirements in the summer, or you came in with more kind of credits than you needed, so more than the 10 or 11.0 credits than needed. You might be able to reduce your kind of course load and that type of thing, so that certainly is a possibility. And I'm just going to pivot kind of one way because I've just thought of something. So our admissions requirements for the professional years, they all need to be met by May 15th. So summer school is not an option in between kind of year 2 and starting the professional years to meet admissions requirements. But certainly if you wanted to work ahead and get kind of more credits or that type of thing, you can certainly do that. You just can't rely on what you're going to be doing in the summer semester to meet your admissions requirements because it's going to be too late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And another question that I was kind of thinking of, talking of admission requirements for the professional years. Now, if a student transfers in, how then is their average calculated for the professional years? Is it based off of everything that they've done or what they've just done at Trent?
What they've done at Trent. Okay. So I only see the numbers, the grades for what you've done at Trent. So that's all I'm going to go by. And the idea is that if you're coming in with transfer credits, you've met kind of that minimum requirement anyways in those. So we're just looking at your Trent credits.
Okay, perfect. Maya has a question here. Would transfer credits be accounted for when you receive your acceptance letter? So I think what Maya's trying to get at is, sorry, can you put the question back up? Is just whether or not she'll know her transfer credits once she gets accepted. Now, typically that is the case because a lot of times when students come, they're coming through an S.W. pathway to Trent.
Yeah, it's already
so it's already pre-matched, those transfer credits. And then if they're not, sometimes there is a bit of a delay between when they get accepted and when they know their transfer credits. But usually that doesn't take very long between the acceptance to when you know your transfer credits. It's simply a matter of just assessing those and then putting them on the student's account. And you can always see what your transfer credits are on your My Trent portal. So that's your student portal here at Trent. And they would be able to tell you exactly how many you have and which ones may be pending or need course syllabi or anything like that. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Destiny has another question here. When do we choose courses as a transfer student?
Yeah, so it depends on when you apply. So if you're applying and being admitted now, course registration tends to open up around mid-June. And then we do a rolling registration based on the number of credits that you have. So first year students who are coming in with 0 credits register last because you're typically only really eligible to register into first year credits. And those are typically not capped. So there's kind of no worries about kind of when you do that, other than maybe kind of making the most ideal schedule. But yeah, so if you have, say, 5 transfer credits, you would be bumped up a little bit earlier. And all of that information gets posted on our website around kind of the course registration time. So you're typically you should be looking at that information kind of beginning June, building your schedule so that you're able to register when your day comes around.
Okay.
And we do work on like it's credit basis. So say you have 5.5 credits, you're not a 6 credit person. You're a 5.5 credit person or a 5 credit person, that type of thing. So you don't round up when it comes to that. So if you're trying to register on say the 6 credit day and it's not working, that's why.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Allison has a question. So she's wondering, would work experience be looked at as a factor in getting into the professional years?
Your essay that you write as part of, so the supplemental essay that you write, we're certainly hoping that students reflect on their personal experiences, which could be, anything from kind of your family or home life all the way up to your job experiences and that type of thing. So that would be how I would reflect on and kind of make that kind of consideration in terms of work experience and how it factors into the professional years admissions process. You want to bring it back to how it's kind of developed you into an aspiring social worker, and tie it back to the coursework and the theories and all of that kind of fun stuff that you've learned. It doesn't factor in of you have 1,000 hours working at this institution or that type of thing. That's not something that we look at in terms of grading or kind of the admissions, but it's more so how you reflect on it and how you have and work through what you've done. And I had this question from one of our current second year students who is applying this year, actually today. And they were really concerned that like they hadn't had a lot of opportunities to work in like a social work field or volunteer and that type of thing. Right. And that is by no means our intention. We want to teach you and give you that experience of how to be a social worker. We don't expect you to come in with that information, experience, that type of thing. Definitely. So, I mean, you could even look at, like, I know when I was in high school, I worked at a Tim Hortons that was in kind of like a lower income area. And we had all sorts of people that kind of came in. And there were certainly times that I had experiences where I could reflect on, what did I see and how did I handle it and how have I changed based on what I've learned in the program and that type of thing. So it certainly doesn't need to be a social work based experience. It can be anything. And like I said, there's so many aspects that can be social work. It's really how you frame it and what you draw from it and how you analyze it.
Okay. Amy has another question here. Do you need a 70% minimum in every single 4U course, or is it an overall average?
So coming in for admissions, I think the university kind of general, it's a 70% cumulative average. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be every single course, but you would want to have that cumulative average kind of at that point.
Yeah, and it's just going to be based off of your top 6. So whatever your top 6 4U or M courses are, as long as that overall average reaches to 70, then you would be admissible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Maya has a question here. So she's thinking or wondering, is a CYW, which I'm thinking is a child and youth worker,
maybe.
Program, is a common pathway for transfer students to transfer into social work.
Yeah. So we don't have a specific articulation agreement with any of those programs. So it certainly could be, especially if you want to work in, say, kind of a CAS setting and that type of thing. But we don't have pathways from those direct programs. So you're going to be assessed for transfer credits on kind of a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tara here has a question. She's wondering, could you talk about what it's like to be a social worker?
Sure. I'm not a social worker. So I don't have that kind of personal experience. I've had colleagues who have worked in prisons, which I find super fascinating. So working with kind of folks in that area. When I had a baby a couple of years ago and I saw a social worker just to kind of chat through what it was like to be a new mom and kind of my feelings and that type of thing. So that was a really interesting experience. Kind of going through like the other side of it of working with a social worker. Just to kind of ensure that my mental health was in check and that type of thing. So that was more of like a therapy or kind of a counseling one-on-one kind of experience. We have social workers that work for the Canadian Mental Health Association here in Peterborough. So one of my colleagues from Trent now works at CMHA in Peterborough. And I think he's more at like the managerial level. So he's managing folks that kind of go out and work with clientele of CMHA. And that type of thing. I think one thing that is important is that you do also kind of prioritize yourself and your own mental health, but realize that you are serving folks. So not that you're kind of secondary, like you really need to be ensuring that you're kind of in good shape, but it's kind of, I guess it's kind of like the oxygen mask dropping down. You put yours on first so that you can help the person beside you. Right. But the important thing is also to help the person beside you.
Right.
And that type of thing. So I think ensuring that you have somebody to talk to and you have assessed and analyzed maybe some of your experiences that you have gone through, whether they have been traumatic or challenging, or you're not quite sure how to feel. So I know a lot of social workers work with other social workers to kind of bounce ideas, and maybe they're working with a client and that client brings up something that's a sore spot for them. And so they work through it with somebody else to be like, okay, how do I best serve this person and not bring my own stuff to get in that way?
Yeah. Because I'm assuming when you bring that stuff in, when you're trying to help somebody, like that's going to affect how you help them and the help that they receive, right? So I think having that, being able to check your own self and your own mental health is really, really crucial to be successful in this job. Okay, so Ismail, I believe I'm saying that right, is wondering, how about dropping a little bit below the 70% overall average but meeting the English requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like possibly already has a conditional acceptance letter.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to take this one?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So as of right now, any student that has received an offer is going to be a conditional offer. And the conditions being you need to meet the minimum requirements to get into your program. So if you're not meeting those minimum requirements, even if you have a conditional offer right now, we can then basically at that point in time rescind that offer because you've met the requirements. So really at the end of the day, it needs to be 70% overall average based off of your top 6 and a 60% in English. Those are the hard requirements. So if you're meeting those, you're getting in. If you're not meeting those, we do offer alternative offers. So we have 2 alternative offers that we would offer. They are general arts and science university transfer offers to Fleming College and to Durham College. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but coming from those programs, you are eligible to then transfer into a social work.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, anybody can be kind of following along the social work pathway. Again, you don't need to be a social work major. You just need to have met those requirements in order to apply to the professional years.
Right. Yep. Right. So I would say then as kind of an alternative, if you're not meeting the conditions coming out of high school, would be to do those general arts and science university transfer programs, complete them and do well on them. And then you would be able to then come to Trent after that 1 year.
And those and writing in them, a big focus. And writing is so important as a social worker. This is something that I actually just learned from one of my colleagues who's a registered social worker just this week. And there's actually requirements that social workers need to be doing ongoing research and kind of working and always kind of learning more and educating themselves. So writing and academic writing, so APA and all of that kind of stuff is super vital for a social worker. And you may not think it, you may not kind of, it may be like, oh, I want to help people. Like, I don't know why I need to be the best paper writer. But that's where those programs really excel because they really focus on reading and writing and researching and taking that information. And that's also vital into like being a successful social worker.
Great. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So Julia here has a question about the specializations and the options that students can take. She's kind of considering, could she do something like the psychological development specialization? Are those things doable, those mini minors like the options and the specializations with the social work program?
Not in a traditional 4-year study trajectory. So I would say if you're looking at, in the 4-year kind of social work trajectory, we have not built in the capacity to allow students to get minors, joint majors, options, anything like that.
Okay.
So you're kind of social work or nothing. Now, if you want to go through, you would do kind of the social work focus option throughout the summer or that type of thing. Like, no, you can't get an option on the social work degree. So I don't think you can meet that. You might be looking at a whole different degree if you wanted to do that kind of option.
Okay. And there could be potentials then for students to look at maybe pursuing postgraduate certificates at other institutions that might have that focus area that you're looking for. But just within our program, like you said, social work.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Lisa here has a question. What's the transition like from learning more practical hands-on stuff from college to more of the theoretical things at university?
Yeah. I think depending on the student and kind of what you've prepared yourself for, B.S.W is not an extension of S.S.W or kind of any other college. It's not like you do this, then you do this, that like, I would say consider them kind of 2 different fields, and that might get you in kind of a better headspace to put the work in at the very beginning that's kind of needed. I know that some students kind of coming from it, again, depending on your strengths and that type of thing, can struggle with the amount of research and writing and essays that there are. So if that's kind of your pathway, make sure that you're focusing on that in the college stream, maybe taking courses in writing. We have a really great writing courses at Trent that I also recommend students take because it's focused on kind of research and writing essays. So it's a really great option. So social work is more theoretical, especially in the beginning and that type of thing. It certainly gets kind of practical down the road. But there's a lot to learn that I would say is kind of theory and higher level and critical thinking. So just be prepared for that. And I wouldn't look at it as a kind of like the next stepping stone because you can come into social work without having done an SSW. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Blakely here has a question. How do courses prepare you, for situations such as dangerous areas for child welfare? So she's gives an example here: a worker needing to go into a neighborhood where they're not welcomed.
So part of that you might learn in kind of your placement, probably job training as well, if you worked into a field that way. We certainly ensure that our students are safe, and we actually don't work with some agencies because what they require of us, we deem unsafe, and that type of thing. Or I guess maybe not in kind of that way, but from like a placement perspective, it's just not, it doesn't meet the requirements of what we want to see.
Okay.
But that would be something. So in our placements, I mean, talking with your field instructors, which are the people at the actual organization that you've got your placement at. So asking those questions. And then all placements are kind of coordinated around the seminar that you do, depending on how it's set up, either weekly or bi-weekly. And so asking those questions and having a conversation if, or, this situation came up and I wasn't quite sure how to handle it, or that type of thing.
Okay.
We also have classes, for example, in child welfare. So there's classes that also kind of talk about it, but I know, Zach, I'm sure you've learned this as well. There's so much learning that you just do on the job that, like,
right. Oh, yes,
you
absolutely.
can't necessarily get prepared for, because who knows what kind of situation comes up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm assuming then within those placement hours, those types of questions then are going to be answered.
Yeah.
You're going to learn that information that you're only going to really get on the job.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. And Julia now has a question, which you literally just answered.
Okay.
Interested in child welfare. You said there's courses.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. David Farang is one of our faculty members, and he's an expert in it, particularly working with like immigrant populations and that type of thing. So he is a wealth of knowledge and a lovely human being. He's one of my favorite people.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So also mentioned, this is Julia again here, that the program teaches not only about learning about caring for others, but yourself. And with that in mind, Julia is wondering, does Trent offer mental health services for students on campus?
Yeah, we certainly do. So on campus, we have the Student Health and Wellness Department. Is that the right name?
Yep.
Yep.
It's
Okay,
kind of like
cool.
the umbrella that they all kind of fall under. Yes.
Yeah. So doctor's office, and student accessibility services, and our counseling center. So we have counselors available specifically for Trent students. They can also refer out into the community as well. There's also programs that run from student affairs. We're based on the college system, which, if you don't know what that is, I'm sure we're doing something on the college system.
Oh yes. There'll be another live stream about that later on, so you can always tune in.
Yeah, so check that out. But our college system also has kind of supports in that way, and that type of thing. And then in classes, like, I think it's kind of, instead of just like a class called self-care or that type of thing, it's weaved into the classwork that you're going to be doing. So how you kind of do it. There's a lot of reflective practice that happens in your classes. So, reading and writing kind of what you've taken away, or maybe how it impacts your life and that type of thing. So there's a lot of reflective practice that comes in that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Allison has another question here. So scenario-based here, let's say she gets through the first 2 years at Trent and applies for the professional years. Will the school look at previous transcripts from schools they went to in the past?
No. So I don't have access to that information. So that was kind of the question that Zach asked earlier, of what grades do I look at? And that's the Trent grades. Okay. So I just pull your Trent transcript. So that's what I look at.
Okay, perfect. And I mean, as long as, like, let's say if they're a transfer student, as long as they're getting into Trent with those grades, then that's all you're going to look at is the Trent grades.
Yeah, and you still have to meet the credit requirements. So if you're a transfer student and you only come in with 2 transfer credits, and then you only take 5 credits and you apply, you only have 7, so you haven't met the requirements. So that's where that's going to impact you. I mean, I'm not going to look at those 2 transfer credits, but you still need to meet all of the requirements, whether you have transfer credits or not. And those transfer credits can be used to helping you meet those requirements in terms of credit total, with the caveat of, if you have the placement, so the 3,000 Y placement, that can't count in your credit total.
Gotcha.
So you would need 11 credits instead of 10.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And then to kind of help figure all that out, is it better to go to you to that, or would that be more something that they would then go and talk to with an academic advisor?
I mean, it depends. Sometimes I'm easier to get into. Sometimes an academic advisor is easier to get into. It's really important to me to kind of be in front of all of our kind of potential social work students.
Okay.
So I went into the first and second year classes this year to kind of let them know, like, these are the requirements right at the outset. So if you need to make any changes or that type of thing, make sure you're meeting them. So I really try to get it kind of in front of people. I also really encourage you, and this is, I mean, I think a skill that is really great about university, but also kind of taking some charge. So I love when students say, email me, and they're like, okay, I've looked at the academic calendar. Here's what I'm taking. This is how I think that it plays into it. Like, can you just tell me if I'm right or not?
Yeah.
So like doing some of that legwork on yourself instead of relying on kind of somebody else to do it. That's, I think, a really important skill because
Perfect. Okay. Now it looked like Maria has a question here, but it sounds like we kind of already answered it. But just to reiterate, non-accepted third and fourth year, what are some other pathways that they can take?
Yeah. So any kind of degree option that you're looking at. So you want to be strategic in years 1 and years 2 and building those alternative pathways. So Maria, whatever your interest is, if it's psych or sociology or Indigenous studies, kind of whatever it is, make sure that you're getting those requirements so that you can go off in that pathway.
Perfect. Okay. Maya has a question. Does the same answer apply in regards to the first question in relations to CYW? Okay, so looks like she's asked a question a little bit earlier. I've done 3 placements with one of them being mental health unit at McMaster's, completing a total of 504 hours this semester.
Yeah, so the max that a student is ever going to get transferred over for placement at Trent in social work is going to be 240 hours.
Okay.
And we're pretty strict on what that comes through, and it's pretty much based on an SSW transfer pathway.
Okay.
So if you have experience, that's really great, and it's certainly not anything to kind of hold your nose at. Like, that's a lot of really great experience. But yeah, we want to ensure the integrity of our program and the people that we're kind of putting out there and that type of thing. So it may kind of come down that you do have to do that 3rd year placement again, even though you have that experience, and you're just going to build on your experience, your networking opportunities, like I've said.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, at least that's how I interpreted it. The more experience, the better, right?
Yeah.
So why not? Okay. Blake Lee has a question here. Do the courses include education about supporting people in things such as abuse, transgender, transitioning, addiction, homelessness, those types of areas?
Yeah, so certainly we specifically have a course on like feminist informed trauma. But I would say you're going to find people from, say, those categories in a lot of the work that you're going to be doing across kind of subject matter. So child welfare. I mean, it might be working with like a trans kid whose family isn't accepting, and that's going to be in kind of like a child welfare setting, not specifically like a trans setting or that type of thing. Gotcha. So I mean, if there's a subject matter or a population that is important to you, I really recommend, in kind of any kind of capacity that you can, is really tailor your like your essays and that type of thing to the subject matter that you're interested in. So I know that's what I did as a student. I had a kind of a particular focus, and just whenever I could, I would write my essays within the realm of the course, but on that kind of subject matter. So
you would maintain that kind of area of focus within the essays that you would write.
Yeah, and just kind of continuing my kind of information or that type of thing. Or sometimes I'd branch out into a different subject and everything like that. But yeah, you can certainly bring in your interest within kind of whatever course. You can also see all the courses and read a synopsis of the courses in the academic calendar. So that might be a really great way to see. The one thing you have to remember about B.S.W programs, and this is a national from our accrediting body, is that these are generalist programs. So we are training social workers to go out potentially to anywhere. So you may have, say, an interest in child welfare or homelessness populations or folks living homeless and that type of thing. But our goal isn't to ensure that you have a deep knowledge in that area. It's to ensure that you have a breadth of knowledge that allows you to go out and kind of work in a number of different areas. So if you have a specific area that you're really kind of interested in, then you're going to want to also be planning for a master's program. So you should also check out the various universities that has a master's of social work. Trent does not, so we're not on your list for that. But you can, you don't need to have the MSW, B.S.W program together. So I have a master's degree and I went to a completely different university than Trent. So there's no kind of link that way. You just need to be a great student.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Karima here has got a question about scholarships.
Ooh.
So wondering about scholarships for the first 2 years and then for the professional years, and what are those requirements to get those scholarships? Is there an application that needs to be filled out, or are they automatically awarded based off of marks? So I guess
that's going to be a Zach question.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask first, are there anything specific for social work students?
Not at the time.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So for that, I'm first going to talk about the entrance scholarship. So the entrance scholarship is going to be automatically awarded to any student that's entering Trent, whether that be somebody straight from high school, from a college, from a university. Students that are looking at achieving this entrance scholarship need to achieve a 80% overall average. So coming from high school, that 80% is going to be based off of your top 6 for U or M. If you're coming from college or university, that's going to be an overall cumulative average coming from your program. If you get that 80% average, you would then qualify for the entrance scholarship. As your entering average increases, so does the amount of scholarship that you'd be available for. So between, like, say, 80 to 90%, you're eligible for anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000. Now, what really makes our entrance scholarship unique is that it is also renewable for every year that you're at Trent. You're able to get your entrance scholarship renewed. So to kind of further elaborate on that, if you come into Trent with a 90% average, okay, so that's going to give you a $2,500 entrance scholarship. All you have to do to get the $2,500 again in the following year is maintain an 80% average. So that is a really big advantage to our entrance scholarship, is that renewable at the 80. Now, on top of that entrance scholarship, we do also have a lot of prestigious scholarships that are available for students. And that could be on our financial webpage to learn more about those. And they are application based. So they're going to be based off of your grade and then the application that you submit for those scholarships. And I believe those applications are always going to be due on April the 1st.
And they're not stackable, right? You couldn't get an entrance scholarship and a prestigious scholarship. You get one or the other, but the prestigious scholarship tends to be more money.
Yes. Typically, it's the prestigious scholarship that students will end up getting because it's usually valued at a higher level. Okay, and then Chaya here, another question. Are there any courses that prepare you for the clinical social work track, specifically regarding placement in hospitals?
So placement in hospitals, most hospitals actually don't allow B.S.W placements because they don't hire B.S.Ws. So it would be very rare for you to have a placement in the hospital setting. And I say that just to kind of ensure that you have kind of realistic expectations and that type of thing. Yes, but no, I mean, I think, like, again, and I kind of said this before, but in kind of different contexts, social work can be very broad. So again, like, you might be working with a kind of a child welfare case in a hospital setting. So, I mean, the hospital setting might be a little bit more regimented and hierarchical and all of that kind of stuff. And we do have kind of like a groups and an organization kind of social work class and that type of thing. But again, because social workers work in so many different areas, it would be impossible to kind of touch on everything. Right. I would say if you were specifically looking at kind of working in a hospital setting, again, you'd probably want to set your mind on doing the B.S.W and then the M.S.W so that you can have that opportunity and that experience.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Now, Maya is asking another question here, and she's wondering the essay that you need to write for the professional years. What does that look like? Yeah,
so it's a 1,000-word essay, so it's not really that big. And I am super mean, and I cut it off at 1,000 words. So if you go to 1,010, I cut off 10 words.
You won't look at those last 10 words.
No, which may make your essay not make a lot of sense. So it's really important that you stick to the requirements of the essay. But our instructions on it are purposefully vague because we want students to interpret and create an essay that represents them. So we're looking, again, kind of at your experiences, how you've integrated your learning from class and that type of thing. But other than that, there's not much more information that we provide on purpose to ensure that students are kind of going with how they want to with it. So because each of you are different, we don't want to say, but I would say, I mean, foundationally, use appropriate essay structure. So if you cite a theory, or if you reference a theory, so if you talk about, kind of something theoretical, you need to cite it appropriately and that type of things. If you use quotations. It needs to be cited appropriately. But other than that, what you talk about, that's kind of based on you and how you interpret the requirements.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Which makes sense, because you would probably want to then have your essay be as unique as you are as a candidate, right? Okay. Blakely has another question here about coping skills of being in a social work setting. Is that something that would be structured into a program or into a course?
Yeah, so that's that kind of self-care idea that I talked about that's kind of weaved throughout a lot of your courses, and that reflective analysis and that type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Blakely does have another question here, and it's kind of about her own experience.
Okay.
It sounds like has been accessing social work care before.
Yeah.
It looks like she was in the foster care system.
Okay.
And she's wondering, like, and I don't know if this is something that maybe you two would want to have a conversation with on your own, but she's just curious, is it a smart idea to go into a social work program coming from that system and having that experience?
I mean, I think that's going to be highly dependent on the person.
Okay.
So that's where that experience or that kind of self-reflection is really going to be dependent on you and that type of thing. And we certainly have students who they intend to do this, and then they get into the program and they decide it's not for them, that they could be helpful in different ways, or they just decided they don't, it's just not for them. And that's totally fine. Our field education coordinator would be, interested in kind of knowing that information, in that, like, we've had students who have various experiences who say, like, I can't work with this population. And that's something that we want to respect, kind of based on experience. And we hope that students are kind of being truthful and honest, and just don't want, like, it's not I don't want to work with these people, and so I'm just going to make up something. That is not what this is for. But if you genuinely have, like, if you're like a sexual assault survivor, working with in the prison system or in that type of thing, you could run into somebody who's been charged and convicted with that, and it might not just be something that you're prepared to deal with. So that can be at times something that we work with. But yeah, it's going to be really dependent. So I would say, if you're coming from high school or that type of thing, take the next year, 2 years to really reflect on it, and build that kind of backup pathway. And then if you decide that, hey, it's not for you, that's totally okay.
Yeah, for sure. Lisa has a question about placements in the justice system.
Okay.
Is that possible?
I do think we have somebody who's kind of working. Let me just see. So the John Howard Society, which kind of started off in kind of a justice background, but I think they certainly do more than that.
Right.
But yeah, so there's the John Howard Society. I think it's not out of the kind of like realm of normal, but we may just not have those placements like fully developed yet, or that type of thing. So
for sure.
Yeah. We have kind of relationships built with our community, and we're forever kind of creating new relationships and that type of thing. But yeah, so I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if I know anybody who works in like a court system, and I'm not sure I do know that. No. So
okay. Yeah. Okay. And then Blakely, this is the final question that we have for this evening, is asking about whether or not there would be reserved seats in the program for Indigenous students.
Yeah, so on our application to the professional years, we actually do ask for kind of equity. Equity identification. So Indigenous, LGBTQ, disability, and racialized.
Okay.
So at your comfort, you can disclose that information, and we certainly take it into account. We don't have necessarily like a 2-seat kind of quota or that type of thing.
Right.
But yeah, we certainly take it into account. That being said, an equity group doesn't supersede meeting the requirements. So anybody who is hoping to get in has to meet those basic requirements for admissions to be considered. And then kind of the equity identification would come after that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Alrighty then. Well, that looks like we are all finished up for this evening. Those are a lot of really great questions. Thank you so much for being able to ask those. This is a really great forum to be able to kind of learn more and ask your questions and really get an answer from the expert. So thank you again for those questions. if you do have any questions in the future, I mean, Jen provided her contact information, so it's always great to reach out to her. Otherwise, if you have general questions about Trent, you can always email our liaison department. So that email address is discovertrent@trentu.ca. If you want to call us, the telephone number is 1-888-739-8885. So you can either email us or give us a call or do both. Hey, whatever you want.
I'll be at the open houses as well.
Yeah.
If you were just going there.
Yeah. So we do also have the open house events, March 14th and March 20th. So the 14th is going to be for the Durham campus and March 20th is going to be for the Peterborough campus. Yeah, I think my dates are right. Yeah. So feel free to come to one of those events because Jen will be there.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn a lot more about the campus and even talk to some of the faculty within the programs as well too. So feel free to do that. If you want to view this again, it would be posted on Trent's YouTube page within the next 24 hours. So you can look for it then. So feel free to do that. Okay. So thanks so much for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
And we'll hope to see you soon. Bye now.
Bye.